Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is 8:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on this Monday morning in your nation's capital, and a busy one at that. If you missed any of our first 3 hours, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a darn thing. Coming up in 30 minutes, Greg Pemberton of the D.C. Police Union, apparently a commander in the Metropolitan Police Department, has been suspended. He's accused of changing the crime statistics, making it seem safer in D.C. than it really is. That's a bit of a scandal. If it's true, we'll get to the details with Greg Pemberton coming up in 30 minutes. Larry O'Connor here with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
You've got your governor's race there in Virginia.
That's right, we do.
And we have a governor of Maryland in Wes Moore who needs to run for re-election in 26, but most people assume that he is running for president in 2028. He's just, as they say, out of central casting.
He is, my goodness.
Army veteran, African-American. He's got a big old smile on his face as he raises your taxes and whittles away the surplus he inherited from Larry Hogan. And he's also really, really good at pointing the finger of blame at other people and towing the Democrat Party line. He was all in on Joe Biden until Biden got thrown under the bus, and then he immediately shifted gears and was all in for Kamala Harris. And he's your typical anti-Trump Democrat, and he's against central casting. He's absolutely running for president. There's no doubt about it. So he appeared on Fox News, which, by the way, is another indication. You know, they have to show that they can go mix it up with those Fox people.
Right.
So you see Pete Buttigieg doing that. You see Gavin Newsom doing that. I'm not afraid. I'll go right in there. You got to go talk to these MAGA people and tell them the truth. So he appeared with Bret Baier. And, let's take a look at the highlights here, as he is the governor right here in this region of Maryland and, again, a presidential candidate. Cut 20. Let's start.
What's your biggest challenge?
Well, I think it still goes back to economic growth. Before I became the governor, we saw how the economy in Maryland had essentially stalled, where spending had increased by 70% under the previous governor, but our GDP was growing by less than half of the national average. And so we knew that we had to focus on a few things. We had to get people back into the workforce. And, we've gone from now 43rd in the country in unemployment to now having one of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country for now over a year, where our unemployment rate right now is 3.2%, which is about still a full point lower than the national average, that we had to be able to, focus on economic growth and sustainable economic growth.
Yeah. So what's left out of that spin is that when he came into office, it was the pandemic. We were coming out of the pandemic, and a ton of people, especially in the Maryland area, were forced out of work because of the pandemic. And spending was increased in Maryland specifically because so many people were told to stay home and not work. So they got state benefits for that purpose.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
Everybody knows that. So
they're shameless.
The shameless lies.
I know.
With a smile on their face and with such confidence. All right, so again, he inherited a surplus from Larry Hogan, and he's got spin to explain all of that. Cut 21.
That we had to be able to, focus on economic growth and sustainable economic growth.
Let me press you on that. Maryland budget surplus when Larry Hogan leaves office versus the current deficit under you. $5 billion surplus, current deficit $3 billion plus. The former Maryland Budget Management Department chief said they left this surplus plus a $2.5 billion rainy day fund, and essentially it was washed away with big spending by you and Democrats in the legislature. How do you respond to that?
I respond that that's been debunked over and over, that we actually turned a structural deficit, which has been predicted since 2017 and was not addressed by the previous government, and turned a structural deficit now into a surplus. And any surplus that we inherited was not a structural surplus, it was COVID money. And COVID money went to every single state around the country. And so to call that a structural surplus either shows that you are intentionally being factually incorrect, or you just don't understand math.
Hey, there you go, Larry Hogan. This is the guy that you were all excited about. You were all happy that he won because you didn't like Mr. Cox. You didn't want to go campaign for him. You didn't even want to campaign for your chosen successor because you were too busy testing the waters in New Hampshire. So this is the thanks you get.
There's something about Trump, too, right?
Yeah,
too
of
close
course.
to Trump.
So Wes Moore is now calling you a liar and trashing you, Larry Hogan. You should run against him and call him out on his lies. See how that works.
Right.
I love the semantics here. Oh, we inherited a structural deficit and we turned it into a structure. What do you mean structural?
What?
Why are you throwing a modifier in there? You either had a surplus or you didn't. Well,
also I love that he's willing to bring up COVID in some to support some arguments, but not when it comes to businesses coming back and employment surging. Right.
Well, and let's compare apples to apples. I'm pretty sure that Virginia had the same effects of the COVID pandemic as Maryland did. They're in the exact same region. They rely on the exact same employment pool and so much of their employees are federal workers. Right? In very, very good comparison, apples to oranges. They both have the same situation with the pandemic. They both have the same budgetary constraints. And yet somehow Virginia is not operating at a deficit. They're not having to raise taxes. And Maryland is. So what's the difference here? Well, Brett Baer presses him a bit on that.
But you talk to some Marylanders, and they are concerned. There's this 3% tax on IT and data services. They feel that their electricity and power rates are going up. They're paying more for it. Fees and registration stuff, they feel it. And so what do you talk to them?
Well, the thing I say to them is that it's exactly why we've really focused on doing things like tax reform that could actually give the middle class a tax cut. And in the tax reform that we just passed, 94% of Marylanders either got a tax cut or saw no changes in their taxes at all. And yes, I did ask those Marylanders who are doing very, very well to pay a little bit more. And so what it means by that is, a person making over $750,000 a year is now investing an average of $1,600 to $1,700 more. That's it. To be able to have the nation's best schools, to make sure we're not laying off our police officers and our firefighters. And I think that's the type of thing that's showing why Maryland now is not just watching population increase. In the Baltimore region alone, we're seeing the fastest population increase that we have seen now in a decade.
Yeah, by the way, all those Marylanders, 94% he says, who didn't get they'd either got a tax cut or no change in their state income tax. How about your car registration fees? How about your fees or your licenses to do anything in the state of Maryland? It's a shell game. Oh, I'm not going to raise your income taxes, but it's going to cost you twice as much to drive a car. Well, that doesn't help. What about your gas taxes?
Yeah.
What about everything that you pay for?
This guy should just keep the word schools out of his mouth because Baltimore,
nation's best schools.
It's like 7% of Baltimore kids are proficient in math, and only 30% demonstrate proficiency in literacy. And by the way, those public schools, they grade up. So you can't even trust that data. It's probably closer to zero.
A little bit more as there was some discussion over the safety in Maryland and the crime rates. And since we're talking about how D.C. is now accused of fudging their numbers to make crime rates look better than they actually are, I think it's fair to examine Wes Moore's claims Friday on Fox News about the crime in Maryland. So we'll get to that and about people leaving Maryland in record numbers. All that coming up in a moment. First, though, it's 8:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
We're seeing the fastest population increase that we have seen now in a decade.
Has that turned recently? Because you had the University of Maryland had this study about, are you considering moving to different states? 53% said they were, and it's the biggest net movers. You're the 8th state of people moving, 2025. Yeah.
Well, the thing that we've seen since I've been the governor is that we're actually watching how there's been a population increase inside of the state of Maryland. And the great thing that we're seeing now is the economic momentum that we're seeing that we've had in Maryland, the fact that we have new job starts and new business starts that are actually increasing now in the state of Maryland. It's because people are actually latching on to the industries, the lighthouse industries that we have laid in, that we think Maryland has a unique chance to compete and win.
A couple numbers there. First of all, the net domestic migration in Maryland in 2023 was minus 31,000. That means 31,000 Marylanders left and went to either Virginia or Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, North Carolina. In 2024, that number dropped, but it was still a minus 18,000. Same states before. Virginia, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, North Carolina were the top destinations. However, if you look at international immigration, if people are coming from other countries, legally or illegally, well, that offsets some of the domestic losses. For instance, in 2023-2024, immigrants comprised about 17% of the state's population, origins like Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In 2023 alone, the net international migration gain was 32,000. That's the 8th highest number in the state or in the nation. So in other words, Marylanders who have lived here for years have had enough and they're leaving, and they're offsetting those numbers so he can lie and say, oh, no, we're seeing some growth, because illegal immigrants, and maybe even some legal immigrants, are all coming into Maryland for one reason or another, and they're making it very enticing for them to come here.
It's just shocking. You think you compare or you combine the fact that so many illegals are coming in, long-term citizens of Maryland are leaving, and then these taxes on IT companies coming in. What does that say to businesses? Why would I want to operate here? Why would I want my company, my employees to live here? It's just incredibly bad optics.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, for every illegal immigrant or even legal immigrant that comes to this country or comes to the state of Maryland, their children cost that much more to educate because you are bound to hire bilingual teachers.
Yep.
So that cuts into the budget problems as well. All right, more here. You listen to this cut here, cut 24, and you tell me, does this sound like a man who is a Democrat running for president? You did listen to all the boxes he checks while on Fox News.
Homicides. Maryland's homicides are down significantly year over year. You've seen that. Baltimore specifically down 23% in non-fatal shootings. What's the turnaround there?
Well, I think what we saw is we were saying that we were not going to tolerate the type of increases where in the 8 years before I became the governor, Baltimore went 8 straight years of 300-plus homicides. That the year before I became the governor.
But how'd you do it?
Well, I think there was a few different things that we did. One is we made historic investments in local law enforcement, where in Baltimore City alone, we've invested over $50 million in local law enforcement. We've made historic investments in predictive analytics and technologies, where if someone commits a homicide or a violent crime with a firearm, I want them in handcuffs in 24 hours. And we worked with the communities and worked with the mayor.
More law enforcement is not exactly the message that your party has sent out, at least parts of your party.
Yeah, well, efficacy and results is the message that I'm sending out inside of the state of.
Yeah, and yet he still claims he's not running for president. I mean, did you hear this man? Do you hear exactly what he's saying? It's obvious.
Yeah, he's definitely moving to the middle on the crime stuff. But I wonder if those numbers are real, Larry. I mean, why should I trust those numbers that murders are down in light of this new information, and the fact that we know that these major urban areas do not accurately report to the FBI, on which these murders are down talking points are based on. So who knows what's real?
Listen, again, I have plenty of criticisms for Larry Hogan, but you can't deny the facts of the matter. When he left, Maryland had a AAA bond rating 8 years in a row, all 8 years that he was governor. He had a $5.5 billion surplus. You may say that it was from COVID. So what? When you inherit that surplus, you have to figure out a way to not whittle that money away and not drive the state into deficit. It doesn't matter where the money came from. He also oversaw $4.7 billion in tax cuts. These are just facts. More comes in. The bond rating within 2 years is downgraded, so they lose their AAA bond rating. They now have a $3.3 billion deficit, and he had to increase taxes by $1.7 billion. The difference is night and day. And those are just facts. I'm sorry. I'm not a huge fan of Larry Hogan either, but the facts are the facts in terms of performance. By the way, one other indication that he's running for president, if you're a Democrat and you're running for president, you can either do what Gavin Newsom does, which is just take the flamethrower to Donald Trump, or you can try to be smart strategically and figure out a way to, lie to the American people and figure out, I'm not like those crazy left-wing liberal Democrats. No. I'm a new way. I'm the middle ground. I'm a moderate. That's what Moore is going to try to do. Listen to this, cut 25.
I speak for myself, and what I say is that we have long had a very broken immigration policy. inside of this country. And it's something that's very personal for me because I come from an immigrant family. And I know that we all know the solution is you've got to be able to secure the border. You have to be able to work to get violent criminals out of our neighborhoods.
You give credit to the Trump administration for the securing of the border, right?
Oh, yeah. But I think what we have is we need to make sure that we understand and are following the Constitution.
So he says he gives credit, but then he suggests that the Constitution isn't being followed. And don't be fooled by this. I'm sure that our listeners see through these lies and see through the spin that we see here, where he says, "Oh, everybody knows we got to secure the border." Well, where the hell were you?
Right.
Where were you speaking out against that porous border? In fact, he was one of the people who said, "Oh, no, we don't have a crisis. We don't have a problem." It's really easy after the fact to come in and say, "Well, yes, of course, we all think the border should be secured." Well, where were you? You did nothing.
That's important. Yep.
He's a charlatan. He's an absolute charlatan, and he's 100% running for president. And again, by the way, that tells you the lie as well, because whenever asked, he constantly says he's not running. And when he runs, I hope you all recognize, oh, well, if he lied to me about that, what else will he lie to me about? It is 8:23.
Coming up, we're going to be talking to Greggory Pemberton. He's chairman of the D.C. Police Union. He'll give us an update on that story of a D.C. police commander being suspended and accused of changing crime statistics. Important stuff. Keep it here. It's 8:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company. WMAL.
It's 8:37. It's O'Connor and Company on a busy Monday morning. Thanks for joining us. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock coming up the Chris Plant Show in 30 minutes. But right now, we're joined by the chairman of the D.C. Police Union, Greggory Pemberton. Good morning, Mr. Pemberton. Good to talk with you.
Good morning, Larry, Julie. Great to be with you.
Maybe you can help me make sense of this story. There seems to be two different narratives here. There's a D.C. police commander who's now been suspended. He's accused of changing crime statistics. Yet at the same time, we're also learning that this could be, I guess, a retaliation from his supervisors because he was blowing the whistle on them for, it looks like it's retaliation against this guy because a week after he filed an equal employment opportunity complaint against the hierarchy at MPD, and his wife was put on the midnight shift. What's going on with MPD?
Well, in typical MPD fashion, it is quite complicated. Let me see if I can break it down for you. First of all, the police department last year reported a 35% drop in violent crime, and now this year they're reporting another 25% drop in violent crime through the end of June. And that just does not line up with the reality that rank-and-file officers are seeing on the street. Crime continues to be ubiquitous, and we're flying around from call to call, stabbings, shootings, carjackings, you name it. So for the chief of police and other elected officials to be taking all these victory laps doesn't seem to jibe with what we're really seeing in the city. And I think citizens feel that as well. What's going on with this commander is that we learned that his police powers were revoked, and he is now under investigation for going into police databases and changing crime stats. And specifically what he was doing, allegedly, was changing felony classifications down to misdemeanors so that they could keep these violent crime stats continuing to drop. Now, where the other part of the story comes in is that my suspicion is that he's likely not the only person that was doing that, because we see this in all 7 of our police districts. And frankly, I've known this commander for some time, and he's not the kind of guy that would go in surreptitiously and manipulate data. He's a stand-up guy, and he's one of the command staff officials that our members respect and look up to. So I think what's happening is he did, in fact, file a complaint regarding the way that he and his wife, who's also a captain on the department, were treated in another matter. And so what potentially is happening is that the department is using this behavior as a way to retaliate. So there's a lot going on in this story, but I think the takeaway for us is that this concept that, quote unquote, crime is down is likely just a farce, and that the police department is finding ways to manipulate this data so they can continue to report that the city is getting safer when in fact it's not. And frankly, I think we have to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Well, we do have to get to the bottom of it, and obviously this is bigger than one police officer, commander altering, supposedly, or he's accused of altering data. Or, I know that's still under investigation, but obviously, if that is happening, and we've seen it in other major cities in the U.S., this is because of political. It seems like they are being pressured to do this by city officials, and again, not just in Washington D.C., but all over the country. What is that culture like within police departments? Do they get a great deal of pressure from largely Democrat politicians who want to make it look like crime has gone down?
Well, you're absolutely right. So in all of these blue cities, going back to 2020, they all advanced all of this anti-police legislation that hamstrung cops and made it impossible for them to do their job, exposed them to all this liability, even when they do their job correctly, demonized them, besmirched them in every way that it could. And now all of those cities have had this mass exodus of police officers, and their staffing levels have plummeted. It's impossible to hire people in those cities for these very reasons. And as a result, guess what? Surprise, crime has shot up. So the citizens in those cities basically saw that, hey, look, this stuff didn't work, and then they began to put pressure on their elected officials to try to undo those things. Some cities have responded, others have not, and I think the ones that have not are still facing that pressure. So rather than repeal their policies or admit that they were wrong, it's a lot easier to just manipulate the data. And I think this is going on in a lot of major cities where they're trying to make it look like crime isn't what it really is, so they can avoid their tougher question, which is that the policies they advanced were misguided and wrong.
How does this affect your rank and file, though? Because if the numbers are being skewed here to make it look like crime is down, then there may be this sense of complacency amongst the district council or amongst the citizens that, oh, okay, well, then the cops don't need the resources we thought they need. They seem to be doing fine with the budget they've got and with the staffing they've got. But, I mean, notoriously, D.C. police have been understaffed for several years now, and that hasn't changed, has it?
No, not. And as a matter of fact, our authorized strength is 4,000. The report that came out on staffing in July shows we have 3,185, so more than 800 vacancies on the Metropolitan Police Department for sworn personnel, and officers are having to work 2 million hours of mandatory overtime to make up for that gap, which is just exacerbating the situation because these officers can go anywhere and get a job once they have a few years experience with the MPD, and they don't want to be treated this way. But to your point about these crime stats, you're absolutely right. This is a disservice to the officers, but more importantly, it's a disservice to the citizens. If we're not taking reports and following up on reports that are commensurate with what the crime is, then not only are we letting those citizens down, but we're letting those criminals off the hook. We're not going after them. We're not arresting them. We're not charging them with the same offenses that we know they committed, which means that you're letting these victims down. So once again, it's a way for the city council and other elected officials to go criminals first, victims last, and make sure that they don't have to be held accountable for these bad decisions.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, Greg, but thanks for joining us as always. And this is certainly, we'll follow this story. It just broke over the weekend, and it certainly will continue to have our attention as the days develop and we get more facts on it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It's 8:43.
Making sense of your world.
Thank you for your clear insight.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
This is a major wake-up call.
Making sense of the news. WMAL. Making sense of the economy. Because it's your money and your retirement. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Everybody loves a good critter news segment, although this one is somewhat terrifying. Let's hear the report and then we'll comment. Go ahead.
Experts are issuing a new warning for this summer about an insect with a sting that feels like a needle, and it only gets worse from there. If you thought murder hornets from a few years back were bad, well, brace yourself for Asian needle ants. ABC's Andrew Dimbert has more on the stinging insect.
New sightings of a potentially deadly invasive species as the Asian needle ant spreads across the U.S. The stinging ant has been spotted in at least 17 states, with the insects now creeping their way into Texas for the first time ever. Wildlife officials are warning of an increase in allergic reaction to the ants. Their painful sting, which can pierce through clothing, contains venom that can trigger anaphylaxis, a life-threatening reaction that causes swelling of the tongue and throat, difficulty breathing, and weak or rapid heart rate. At least 3 people in Georgia wound up in the hospital last year after getting stung by needle ants. It comes as Joro spiders have become an unexpected part of life in Georgia. Native to East Asia, the colorful arachnids the size of a human hand first showed up in the state about a decade ago and have since spread rapidly across the southeast.
Spiders, when they get scared, they freeze and they don't do anything. I don't know what you would have to do to get bitten by a Joro spider, but it's very, very unlikely, and even if it happens, it's not going to be dangerous.
The Asian needle ant is not the first invasive insect sparking concern over its deadly sting. In 2019, a so-called murder hornet was spotted in Washington, the wicked wasp known for its incredibly painful sting as well as its aggression.
The mandibles, there we go, you can sort of see them, are pretty large. They're very, very sharp, and that's what they use to decapitate these, and then they'll mash up the thorax into a meatball, they call it, and fly it back to feed to their larvae.
Murder hornets were officially eradicated in the U.S. last year. Andrew Dimbert, ABC News.
Honestly, I hear a story like that, and I'm just like, why even bother getting out of bed?
Seriously, don't go outside. Don't go outside.
Oh, yes, the Asian needle ants. They will sting you. And it'll feel like a needle. Oh, and by the way, it's like, okay, I'll go outside, but I'll make sure I wear clothes. You know, right? I won't be in shorts or a T-shirt. Oh, no. They'll sting you right through your clothing.
Okay, but also, this to me is like bioweaponry, right? Like, I want to know, and this is serious. 2 Chinese researchers.
This has got to be Fauci's fault.
Totally. I totally blame him, okay? Because, and look, the Chinese might be up to no good here because in June of this year, 2 Chinese researchers were caught smuggling this fungus into the United States that can literally destroy crops across the nation. Right. And they caught them. Great. What else are they smuggling in? Murder hornets? Needle ants?
Can I tell you, both Saturday and Sunday in Maryland, I was over at a friend's house on Saturday, and I went to a restaurant on Sunday in Annapolis. Yeah. Both days, we saw all these Chinese lantern flies all over the place.
I'm telling you.
Invasive.
They want us to stay inside. No, listen. They want us to stay inside, sit on our couch, and watch Netflix and get fat. That's it.
That's right. That's right. Whether it's the Wuhan virus or it's now these insects that are going to drive your life crazy. You know what? I'm starting to rethink world travel. There's a reason why the Pacific Ocean is so big. Okay, we were never meant to cross it.
Right. Going to cancel your trip? No.
No. I'm going to Europe. That's different. It's 8:53.